In Vintage Story, next to my farm there was an old castle ruin. It had always been there, towering in the distance, though I never wished to go inside. Over the months of me settling down and building myself a home, I was of course curious as to what lingered inside that tomb. Though curiosity wasn't enough to push me over the edge, so I remained in my warm yet drafty farm, and only occasionally stared back at the looming tower. One day, after unfortunate circumstances pushed me towards a strange kind of curiosity, I decided to pay the ruin a visit. It had been raining for days. A thick layer of clouds blocked the sun, the towering wreck standing there, a cube of rubble, stone and wood, almost penetrating the grey and white of the low-lying clouds. It looked daunting, like it was the only thing that kept the sky from crashing down on the meadows. A skeletal pillar crushed between two planes, separating the green from the grey. There was no path. The gate was hidden behind more thorny layers of bushes. The closer I got, the more the walls seemed elongated and stretched. I must admit, in that moment when I stood in front of the castle, I longed for the small yet warm candle in my drafty farmhouse. Though something pushed me forward, into the dirt and thorns of the gate. I fought my way into the yard. It was even more overgrown than the space surrounding the ruin. Mushrooms and overgrowth climbed up the rubble and ate away at the bricks, as if nature itself had been trying to reclaim and bury the place for good. I found a hole in the wall and stepped inside a room that looked like a former sleeping quarter. The roof was partly gone and cobwebs layered the walls. The next room was at the foot of the keep. It was less muddy due to the broken roof being 2 stories away, yet the dryness resulted in a floating layer of dust that filled the space and made you miss the sweet, damp smell of wet stone and leaves. The space was filled with old barrels, crates, a quern, and a risky ladder that stretched to the next story. I managed to climb there and found a somewhat dry, almost cozy set of rooms that seemed to have been a library once. Some books were still intact, telling stories of the family who lived here. Royalty, heritage, lineages that vanished over the centuries. Battles long forgotten, a reminder of a past time and of time passing. And then I realized again the fragility of the skeleton that I'm standing in. The walls could break any minute, the roof could cave or the floor could give in. Just a small intrusion of a curious mind, and it all could come crashing down, speeding up the process of decay. An erosion through the elements disturbed by a single spark of bad luck. An intruder, just like myself. I noticed the hollow walls, once being the muscle of the body, now vanished to skin and bone. The inside rotten with mold and other kinds of nasty stuff. I felt sick. I could smell it. This place reeked of death. In my panic, I almost overlooked the small dusty candle that stood lit and upright on a broken bench. At first I was puzzled by the sight, yet before I could comprehend what that lit candle could actually mean, I heard a raspy and faint voice behind me. When I left the castle, something was changed. In that place I learned something. Something about my own life, back in reality, that I was trying to grasp. You see, 3 years ago, my father got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and a very difficult time ensued. I can't describe to you what kind of a toll the sickness had on everyone involved. Of course, it was a brutal fate, and I still wonder how my family and father managed to keep living during that time. Because I can only speak for myself, I want to share with you how I dealt with this difficult period, and how I learned through a game called Vintage Story a lesson so important that I felt the need to share it with you as best as I can. When my father got diagnosed, gaming was already something that became complicated. You might already know this, but with stress and growing responsibilities, free time feels like something that has to be planned and valued. Gaming becomes more and more of a chore, something that distracts you from working, and so the fun passes. You sit in front of your screen, thinking of what to play, what to put your valuable time into, ultimately not choosing anything. I myself always tried to keep at it, out of habit mostly, even during my father's initial months of sickness. Playing games that I didn't enjoy, just for the sake of having a reason not to go downstairs and be confronted with the dire reality. Therefore, it was a slow realization that for us, life was changing forever. At first we were still hopeful. His first operation seemed to have been successful, but once the cancer resurfaced, the ground under our feet caved in. Thinking about death was not an option, for his current symptoms were so severe that everything else became trivial. Sadly, some people understand when I say cancer is brutal. On the good days, we would be able to laugh, enjoy our time together and forget the looming threat to my father's life. On the bad days, we would try to sleep with our doors open, as to not miss another pain attack, interpreting every sound that came from the street as a cry of pain. I think the worst part was the helplessness that I felt, sitting next to him, trying to calm him down, all the while watching how he deteriorates mentally and physically. It went on like that for 3 years, and I must admit, I looked for every opportunity to escape this situation. One day, I stumbled across such an opportunity in the form of a game called Vintage Story. I had no idea why it stuck with me at the time. It was almost instinctual, buying it, starting it and taking my first steps in this blocky world. I had no interest for another boring crafting game, the genre generally being oversaturated with options of mediocre gaming experiences that tended to stuck with me for no longer than a week max. But as you might guess, I was proven wrong. There was something here amidst the steep cliffs and rainy fields that strangely allured me. I felt the need to explore, see what is behind the next cliff and tread through thick forests. The nature felt real and alive, as if the elements truly mattered and we weren't just traversing a sandbox, but were actually part of this world. From the intro, you already know that I settled next to a ruin. It was a nice open field in a temperate climate with a forest and water nearby. A perfect spot to call home. But more than that, the old building in the middle of the field allured me. Of course, it was a picturesque sight, and I even played with the thought of renovating it one day. Later, I would come to realize that maybe there was more subconscious decision-making involved, looking for teachings and guidance that this old building would eventually offer to me. In Vintage Story, after a while you get into a routine that feels satisfying and never exhausts itself. What makes this game different is its crafting system. You don't just place a recipe, you smelt ore, shape the metal and fire the clay. It feels tactile, like you're really making something, while keeping it accessible and intuitive. I built a small farmhouse, a cellar to preserve my food, a shack, some fields, and eventually even had animals and built myself a windmill. I was building a small farmstead, a space that was calm, full of things to do and stuff to explore, occasionally skimming over to the old castle ruin that sat there waiting. Eventually autumn came around and the game turned into an almost cozy Victorian-like settler's dream. I loved my little bed, the painting above it, the bulky oven and small chicken shed. I loved baking pies and watched them slowly rise up. I marveled at the leaves turning red, as if I was a child again, being reminded of the old children's books that my mother would read to me, or the paintings that I would draw in kindergarten. You know, that nostalgic feeling that you get when everything is brown and orange. I was sure that I finally found it, a place to escape to. Even if it was just for half an hour, I could open up Winter's story and forget about the circumstances at home. And now I know there's no shame to escaping. I think it is very natural to need a break from tragedy once in a while and to feel the need to just leave everything behind and be happy again. Then again, that thing was always in the back of my mind. A realization which I had been procrastinating for a long time. Sometimes I even hated that damn thing. Wanted to fix it, make it a new home. There's too much other stuff to do, I always thought. Next spring I fix that old thing. Well, winter came about and the meadows turned into white shiny fields. I still had crops that were slowly dying away, though I worked hard to accumulate a moderate stockpile of preserved foods that would hopefully last the winter. The cold became an issue. I would mostly stay in my hut by the fire. The cozy atmosphere started to dwindle, for the winter was long and harsh. Back in the real world, things became unbearable. The imminent death of my father became more and more difficult to ignore, him being visibly only a shell of his former self. The last days of his life were even more challenging than anything that we experienced before, and I must admit that these days stuck with me, like a dark cloud that looms over every free minute, making it impossible to remember the good old days, pushing every joyful memory far away behind the wall of ruth. I kept asking myself, what's it like? What's it like to know that you have a couple of days to go before everything fades to black? What goes through your head? What do you remember? You are shutting yourself off. Are you afraid? I'm afraid. I'm afraid of dying. Sometimes I can't stop thinking about it. kept looking at the towering skeleton in front of my farm, feeling the urge to fix it, build it back up, make it stand strong like the fortress it was long ago. Well, now you know what pushed me inside. When I explored the castle and heard the faint, raspy voice, I turned around. An old man was standing in front of me, looking at me with tired but kind eyes. His face had the complexity of a bust that was long eroded by the elements, faint hair growing everywhere in long, thin lines. All this time, this castle was anything but uninhabited. He was a trader, he told me, living in this place for decades now. As to my question of why he would live in a place like this, he couldn't tell me. He shrugged it off and said this place is as good as any, and that he wouldn't mind the dust and dirt. I could tell by his complexion. But still, there was something about that old man, living and thriving in decay, that showed me that I was missing something. At first I ignored it. So in the next spring, when I started renovating the castle, I didn't consider the old man living in the keep. I patched holes, fixed roofs, threw out all of the overgrowth that was scattering around. I did prepare for this undertaking, every now and then gathering stone and clay that I could use to fix the damage. It had always been in the back of my mind. Fixing that damn tomb. By day 5 of renovating, I already fixed the whole foundation of the ground floor. I didn't really care if it looked good, as long as it was working. Though holes kept coming back. Patches wouldn't hold, stone would run out. My farm needed care, else I would starve. I had to hunt, craft new tools. The system that was once so engaging now felt like a strain. I didn't prepare enough, and got annoyed and even angry at that thing. In the middle of my frustration, I heard the old raspy voice of the trader, dwelling in his library and probably shuffling through piles and piles of old books. As I said, I ignored him until then. He didn't mind the renovation, I think. So there was never really any reason to visit him. Yet this day, I climbed to his room over the risky ladder, said hello and talked to him about this and that. He told me about the treasure that was somewhere to the east. I looked at his old books and jewelry, and eventually I left. I didn't touch the castle since then. It is still standing there, between the bushes and leaves, slowly falling apart. By that point, I finally got the metaphor. Grief can't be fixed. The loss of a person cannot be healed. They will always be missing, and they will always be dead. Grief becomes part of the landscape of our lives, and that is okay. And in that acceptance, we find the small candles that keep everything together. And if you yourself have a loved one that is suffering from any terminal disease, let me tell you that yes, it is brutal. And yes, it is tragic. And yes, it is okay to want to escape, to get sad and angry even at the sick, and that you are not a bad person for thinking the things that you are thinking. My advice, find spaces where you can let go. People that you feel at ease with. And remember, it is not about what you think that defines you as a person. It is about finding ways to persevere, to gain strength for the moments when you need it the most.